Whether you're navigating a business deal, dealing with your landlord, or asking for a raise, it's time to face the facts. You are a negotiator. You negotiate with co-workers over assignments. You negotiate with family members over chores. No dishes for me. You negotiate with a partner over finances, which is always tricky. And although we negotiate most of the time, most people don't do it well. We're going to change that today by teaching you a strategy of negotiation. Are you ready? But before I forget, for more great book summary videos, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button. If you find this video helpful, click the like button and let us know what you think. I love hearing from you. In Getting to Yes, authors Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton provide a step-by-step process for reaching mutually beneficial agreements in virtually any kind of conflicts. Issues at the workplace, family drama, dealing with terrorists, which can be the same thing. Yes, any. They call it principled negotiation. I'll give a brief overview of the 4 keys it involves and share some tips on how to apply them. They are: separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain, and insist on using objective criteria. But before we get into the 4 keys, let's take a moment to consider how most people negotiate. Most people use a form of negotiation called positional bargaining. Positional bargaining focuses on what people want at the start of a negotiation, whether that's money, an action, or some other outcome. Then people haggle on those positions until agreement is met. However, positional bargaining has the following problems. First, it leads to unwise outcomes. The more people argue about positions, the more committed they become to them, which makes negotiation harder. Also, people want things for different reasons. I might want the last lemon because I want lemonade. You might want the last lemon because you want the peel to bake a cake. In many cases, if we never go beyond the surface position into the why, there's a great chance of bypassing a mutual solution that could have satisfied us both. Secondly, it can take too much time. The more extreme an opening position is and the smaller the concessions, the more time and effort it will take to discover whether agreement is possible. This is what I want. No, this is what I want. I mean, how long can that drag on? Third, it can endanger an ongoing relationship. Positional bargaining is basically a contest of will. Whoever holds out the longest by stubbornly holding on to their point of view eventually wins. The other person who eventually bends to the stubborn one may agree, but long term, resentment could fester and even last a lifetime. Finally, with large groups of people, it does not work. Think of the UN, for example, where over 100 countries have to reach agreement. Imagine trying to find one common position amongst 150, or dealing with the fact that a single no can stop all talks from proceeding. Damn. Eventually, in these situations, agreement might be reached symbolically, with certain regions of the world banding together, as opposed to solutions that could have served common underlying interests. I don't want to haggle anymore, so what's the alternative, you ask me? I'll tell you. Principled negotiation. This type of negotiation looks for mutual gains and insists that solutions be found wisely and efficiently while maintaining or improving the relationship. That sounds amazing. So let's get into it. Its first key is to separate the people from the problem. In negotiation, there are 2 factors you need to keep track of: the problem and the relationship. The 2 often get mixed up. For example, you might point out a problem and say, the kitchen is a mess. But because of your relationship, or humans, the person hears it as a personal attack. Are you saying I'm a dirty person? So here are 4 ways to separate them. First, change your perception. We often examine the perspective of others like we'd look at a beetle under a microscope. But that's not enough. You have to be a beetle and feel its side of the story. Why? Because, and write this down, the easiest way to change someone's mind is to understand it. Second, keep track of emotions. In the middle of a negotiation, it's easy for people to get emotional. If an outburst happens, don't react. Keep it cool. Staying calm helps you remain constructive. Just focus on observing and understanding their emotions and yours. Next, work on your communication. Go further than simply listening attentively and instead make a case for their point of view. You heard me. Show them you feel where they're coming from, beetles and all, and it'll be harder for them to dismiss you. Open their heart with positive language like, you make a strong case. Feeling heard and appreciated makes us more willing to listen. Like, maybe I wouldn't think the way you think, but what you're saying makes sense to me. Finally, avoid the problem to begin with. Before negotiation, develop a working relationship with the other person. Believe it or not, talking about weather or a recent sports game helps create a mutual ground that a smooth negotiation can stand on. Now, you might hate small talk, but turns out it helps to build a rapport. So show up early to the chat, look out the window, and find something to say. Sunny day, eh? This brings us to the second key of principled negotiation. Focus on interests, not positions. Here's an example. Two men sitting in a library are arguing about a window. One wants it open and the other wants it closed. Until the librarian comes along and asks why, neither man explains his position. It turns out the first man wants fresh air, but the second wants to avoid a draft. Understanding the situation, the librarian shuts that window and opens one further away. Similar to the lemon example, there was a third option that served both their interests that nobody had thought about. So it's obvious to say, but easy to forget. There's a reason behind what we want. Understanding those reasons opens the door to mutual solutions that no one thought about. That's why arguing positions is so ineffective. So here are a couple tips on how to focus on interests and not positions. First, take time to explore interests beforehand. And before meeting the person, ask yourself, if they agree to what you want, what would that be and why? Then explore what they might want and why they might agree or disagree with you. Think of it as an empathy pre-game that makes for a better negotiation process. Second, during negotiation, remember to ask why to an offered position. When we ask why, we practice looking for underlying reasons. And remember, this isn't a why, which sounds like a demand for justification. It's a why, to understand a person's hopes, fears, and desires. If finding that isn't as clear, try asking why not to the ideas you propose. This offers a different way to explore interests. Third, share your interests before your proposal. If you start by saying, this is what I want and these are my reasons, the other person is likely to switch off because they'll probably find your wants unreasonable. But if you share your interests before your proposal, they can at least say to themselves, I can see how that looks like a logical solution to them. Finally, be soft on the person but hard on the problem. Don't be afraid to advocate strongly for your interests, but be supportive of the other party and express concern for their interests as well. They'll want to maintain your positive view of them and look for resolution quicker. The third key of principled negotiation is to invent options for mutual gain. Doing this as its own brainstorming step gives space to expand the pie before dividing it. So here are a few tips to keep in mind. First, separate brainstorming from deciding the option you'll choose. Have you ever been in a meeting and the first idea you gave was shot down? Hi, I have a thought. No? Okay. After that, did you feel excited about offering more ideas? No! So as a first step, separate discussing the options from judging them. Judgment hinders imagination, but allowing even crazy ideas fosters creativity. And as you do this, emphasize that no one should tie an idea to the person that came up with it. It's just a brainstorming. Because people be like, what? Jim? I thought you were on our side. Second, consider the environment. It's easiest to brainstorm with a smaller group in a casual environment, 5 to 8 people max. And feel free to leave the negotiation room. If negotiations have been formal, you could even ask people to dress informally. I work at the UN. Third, encourage conflicting parties to sit on the same side. Literally. Remember, the basis of principled negotiation is to move from me versus you to us versus the problem. So make opposing sit on the same side, perhaps facing a whiteboard, to encourage this kind of focus. Finally, after the brainstorm, follow this process. First, relax the no criticism rule and start assessing some of your ideas. Second, choose the ones that are promising and improve them. Finally, evaluate the final positions from the other party's point of view. This makes it easier for them to pick whatever you come up with, because if your proposal already serves their interests, negotiation will go so much smoother. The fourth key in principled negotiation is to insist on using objective criteria. There's a harsh reality we have to face. No matter how much you value a relationship or invent amazing ways of reconciling interests, there will be interests that conflict. You want the rent lower, the landlord wants it higher. You want the shipment delivered tomorrow, the supplier prefers next week. And no win-win talk can hide that. Sad, isn't it? Therefore, the more you bring standards of fairness, efficiency, or even scientific merits to bear on the problem, the more likely you are to reach a final agreement that's fair and wise. So here's some tips on how to do this. First, before negotiating, investigate fair standards. Whether you're talking about rent, a salary, or an insurance claim, prior to negotiating, search for relevant information. This could be market value, precedent, what a court would decide, moral standards, etc. Second, make this search for objectivity a joint effort. Ask questions like, what objective criteria can we use? And when offered a position, ask, what's your theory behind that? The other day, I actually used these questions when negotiating a refund with a local phone repair service. Together, we investigated the objective cost of a new screen and the service required to repair it and came up with what we both believed was a fair price. This helps to choose an option based on principles instead of vague proposals. And keep in mind that this isn't about using objective criteria that only you agree on. Some might conflict. The goal is to simply bring more objectivity into the negotiation and make that a joint effort. Third, investigate fair procedure. If it's a 50-50 chance on who gets what, before making that choice, you could let one side choose what the other gets. For example, if you're figuring out custody arrangements in a divorce negotiation, before deciding which part gets custody, each could propose the visiting rights of the other. This creates the incentive to be fair. In the end, if you still can't choose, you can always draw lots or flip a coin, because as crazy as it seems, relying on chance carries an inherent degree of fairness. So there you have it, the 4 keys to principled negotiation. Separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain, and insist on using objective criteria. So let me know in the comments section which key or lesson stood out to you. Remember to be patient with yourself. Effective negotiation habits are not formed overnight, but trying to improve can save relationships or even prevent war. So, totally worth it. Read the book, we don't need World War III. Also, the book has a lot more information that we didn't have the time to cover in this video. For example, how do you use these principles to negotiate with someone more powerful than you? Or who is extremely assertive, attacks you, or possibly flat out lies? If you're interested in going deeper, check out the Shortform guide to getting to yes. Shortform makes the world's best guides to non-fiction books, complete with well-crafted short exercises that help you learn faster and remember more. You can get a 5-day free trial and a discounted annual subscription if you go to shortform.com/YouTube. Click the link in the description below. And support the author and publisher by buying Getting to Yes. A link to buy the book is below as well. Finally, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next Shortform video. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.